Hey y'all, this is Miss Smith and I'm doing a screen share for this week's video. Instead of making several small videos, I'm going to try to make one big video, but we'll see how it goes. I know a lot of y'all are having trouble viewing multiple videos, so maybe this one will simplify things. So this is what your Canvas page should look like. We've got distance learning week 1, week 2, and now week 3. I think that yours are minimized like this, but if they're like that and you want to simplify things, just close that module. Okay, so distance learning week 3, we've got our choice board, which I've already downloaded, and it looks like this. And let me go ahead and talk about all this before we get started. All right, 7th grade ELA week 3 distance learning this week, Monday the 6th to Friday the 10th. Complete everything above this line, and I forgot some punctuation, so ignore me right there. Complete everything above this line. So you need to do these 3 things if you have internet access. Now, if you do not have internet access, you cannot do the Wordly Wise, and that's okay. I totally understand. Or the Wordly Wise quiz is there's multiple, so you get what I mean. Okay, and then below this line, pick one to complete after you complete everything above. So there's 2 options this week, and I'll explain those in just a second. So Monday, you need to do a quiz. Let's go back to the module for a second. It's right there. There's lesson 15 bell work that you can download. You don't have to do the whole packet. I just wanted you to have the definitions, and it just comes as a whole PDF packet, okay? So you've got the definitions in order to do Monday's quizzes and Wednesday's quizzes. So let's look back at the choice board. All right, your iReady reading pages, you need to read pages 187 through 192 and work through them as I go through them on this video. Now, you can edit a PDF and save it and send it to me. Some of y'all are having trouble saving it and sending it to me. So if you're having that problem, just screenshot it and send it to me. Okay, and then we have independent practice, which is just the next few pages, pages 193 through 196. You can do that online on Canvas. I've set it up a little differently, and I'll explain that near the end of this video. Or you can do it on paper. Send me screenshots if you can. Okay, now if you don't have internet, you also should get this packet from the school. And if you are somehow able to watch this video and don't get this packet or can't get this packet, let me know. All right, after you finish these 3 things, if you have internet access or if you don't have internet access, that means these 2 things. I need you to either pass 2 iReady reading lessons for this week, and I forgot to put an S there, or you can write a paper. It's only 250 to 350 words, which I know sounds like a lot to you, but it isn't. Comparing the 2 articles that are in the independent practice called Big Fish in Troubled Waters and Protecting the Ocean One Choice at a Time. Please write in paragraphs and submit through Canvas. I'll show you the link. Okie dokie. So there's your choice board, your bell work vocabulary, definitions, your Monday quizzes, your Wednesday quizzes. You can do those whenever you want, really. And then lesson 18 student, which is this right here that we're about to talk about. And then the comparison paper, which I just talked to you about. Let's go ahead and click that. If you would rather do the comparison paper instead of passing 2 iReady reading lessons for this week, then just do this, okay? You've got to just type it into the text box, or you can type it in Word and then copy and paste it or whatever. Okay. How do we get back? There we go. Alrighty, and then I will talk about the independent practice at the end of this video. Okay, so we are going to go through lesson 18, comparing and contrasting text together right now. Our standard for this week is RI 7-9. Analyze how 2 or more authors writing about the same topic shape their presentations of key information by emphasizing different evidence or advancing different interpretations of facts. Okay, so we all know this situation in real life. You might have one story about a situation that you tell your parent or your teacher when something goes wrong, and a friend or a sibling or another student might tell the parent or teacher something totally different, okay? Or it may be the same situation, they've just phrased it differently. So we all do this at times to make things sound a certain way. But we are going to work specifically on comparing and contrasting two different views. All right, imagine that two artists use the same paints to paint a mountain scene. One creates a dark, scary landscape, and the other paints a bright, peaceful place. Even though the artists use the same materials and paint the same subject, their results depend on the effects they want to achieve and the colors they choose to create those effects. In the same way, authors may write about the same topic, but depending on their purpose, they may choose to focus on different details and evidence. As a result, they produce very different products. All right, now I want us to look at the cartoon below and think about how the characters are reacting to the poster. What if they both decided to write reports about global warming? How might each of them approach the topic? So the girl on the left says, what causes global warming? As she's looking at this picture that says stop global warming, and it's got two polar bears on it. And then the boy says, what's going to happen to those polar bears? So the girl is specifically concerned about global warming as a whole, and the boy is specifically concerned about the polar bears, or the poor polar bears. So he's looking at it on a narrow view, and she's looking at it on a wide view, but they're both looking at the same thing, global warming and its effects, or how it is caused. All right, let's look at the chart. Which facts do you think each of the two characters would emphasize when writing about global warming? Earth's average temperatures are increasing. Rising temperatures result in the melting of the polar ice caps. Polar ice melt causes sea levels to rise. Hold on just a second. Okay, causes of the problem. Fossil fuel emissions release heat-trapping gases into the atmosphere. The additional heat raises local temperatures and, in turn, impacts Earth's climates. And then effects on wildlife, so how global warming affects wildlife. Loss of habitat due to ice melt results in decreasing animal populations, so fewer animals because they can't survive. And then changes in feeding and migration patterns put animals at risk. All right, so they can't migrate and eat the way they normally would because of global warming. All right, while both students would probably use the information in the first column, the girl probably also would use the evidence in the second column, while the boy would focus on facts from the third one. So she's worried about what causes global warming, so causes of the problem. Duh, she would think about these things. He's worried about the polar bears, so he would think more about effects on wildlife. These are general facts, so they could go with either person. Earth's average temperatures are increasing. That may be what she's thinking about causes global warming, but that might make him start thinking about the ice in the Arctic, which is what it's talking about right here. The polar ice caps, polar ice melt causes sea levels to rise, and all that. All right, always keep in mind that an author's purpose for writing shapes the way he or she presents key information, as well as which facts and evidence are emphasized. So author's purpose is going to be really important when we're comparing and contrasting. Okay, if you need to pause now and take just a second, that's fine. As we shift pages, you are welcome to pause. You're welcome to come back to the video. Okay, modeled instruction. Read the following scientific account about global warming. I'm going to increase my screen a little bit. Okay, we see that it's a scientific account because it says the genre is a scientific account, which means that this is based on science. It's not a fictional story or anything like that. So the title is Global Warming, Why? By Rex Woodbury. So when I first read this title, I thought they are questioning why global warming happens. That's why it's set up this way. Okay, so let's read about it. Scientists who study climate models and climate patterns are concerned that the Earth's average temperatures seem to be increasing. They also report that a warm up of even a few degrees will have far reaching effects on climate, wildlife, human food production, and freshwater supplies. Why is this happening? To understand global warming, imagine that our planet is wrapped in a blanket. The blanket is made up of carbon dioxide and other gases that collect and trap the sun's heat in the Earth's atmosphere. It's important to understand that this blanket serves as a protection from the intensity of the sun and its dangerous rays. The burning of fossil fuels and other human activities, however, have changed the makeup of this protective covering. In simple terms, by adding more gases, we've added more layers, and the blanket traps more heat than it should, heat that changes our environment. I don't know about y'all, but when I read this, this really gives me a picture of what global warming is like, okay? The use of the blanket scenario that the author writes about really helped me envision what global warming does. Okay, how does the author's purpose shape the focus of the account and the key information he presents? In the first paragraph, the author points out the problem caused by increasing temperatures and then asks a question. In the second paragraph, he answers that question by explaining more about the process of global warming. Okay, so we've got two paragraphs up here that we'll be looking at. In the chart below, write the focus of this account. After you read the account on the next page, fill in columns 2 and 3, then compare and contrast the ideas you wrote. Okay, so we're not filling in focus of account 2 and ideas in both accounts yet because that's the one on this page and we haven't done that yet. So focus of account 1. Okay. Scientists who study climate models and are concerned about the Earth's average temperatures seem to be increasing. So scientists are worried about temperatures increasing. If you want to underline that, you can. They report that a warm up of even a few degrees will have far-reaching effects on climate, wildlife, human food production, and freshwater supplies. And then they ask why is this happening. So they tell us why it's bad, and then they want us to figure out why it's happening, which is what they're doing right here. To understand global warming, imagine that our planet is wrapped in a blanket, and then they use that scenario. What does this whole scenario with the blanket suggest? It suggests that, well, it doesn't suggest, it explains why global warming is happening, why Earth's temperature is increasing. So go ahead and put that down in this right here. If you need to pause me right now and write that down, that's fine. Or if you need to rewind and listen to that again and then pause, that's fine. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read the next account though. Read another account about global warming. Again, this is another scientific account. We're going to use the close reading and the hint this time to help us complete the chart back up here. Okay. All right, the side effects of warming by D. Garza. I think that's how you pronounce that. Not sure. All right. Global warming widely impacts both Earth's climate and the environment as a whole. Did I say Earth's climate? Okay, I'm going to start over. Sorry, guys. Global warming widely impacts both Earth's climate and the environment as a whole. The Arctic regions, in particular, are suffering due to climate change. Glacial ice is melting at an alarming rate. The amount of ice lost in recent years equals the combined area of Alaska, Texas, and Washington. This change to the Arctic landscape endangers many of the creatures living there. Polar bears, for example, depend on glacial ice. It allows them to travel far from land to open water to find their favorite prey, seals. A decrease in this ice limits the bear's ability to reach their prey, thus reducing their chance of survival. Only by changing human habits that contribute to climate change, such as the use of fossil fuels, can we stop the harmful effects of global warming on wildlife. All right, let's look at the close reading. The accounts here and on the previous page both tell about global warming, okay? This one is called the side effects of warming, and this one is called global warming why. All right, so we both know that they compare because they talk about global warming, but they use key information differently. Underline any facts in this account that are similar to those in the first one. All right, so we've got to find some things that are similar. You can pause me right now and go ahead and try to find those things. I'm going to tell you that there are 3 things. Okay, the first thing is the first sentence. Global warming widely impacts both Earth's climate and the environment as a whole. Okay, and this one talks about that right here. So it talks about it will have far-reaching effects on the climate, and then wildlife, human food production, fresh water supplies, all of that is the environment. And then the next one is, in this sentence right here, this change to the Arctic landscape endangers many of the creatures living there. Okay, but we're not going to underline the Arctic landscape because the first one does not talk about that. But this last one does. I'm sorry, y'all. I keep yawning. I'm tired. Okay, this change endangers many of the creatures living there. Wildlife, human food production, freshwater supplies. That means it will affect the creatures living on Earth. Okay? And then the last one is near the bottom. Human habits that contribute to climate change, such as the use of fossil fuels. Also thought this was interesting because we talked about fossil fuels and renewable energy last week. All right, and it talks about fossil fuels up here. The burning of fossil fuels and other human activities, however, have changed the makeup of this protective covering. Okay, next we're going to star any unique details. So anything that's unique to this passage, not the last one. All righty, let me look around for just a second. I forgot where they were. All right, the amount of ice lost in recent years equals the combined area of Alaska, Texas, and Washington. I can't star on here. Well, I probably could. Y'all could figure out a way, but you know I'm bad at this. So I'm going to highlight it in yellow like a star. Ta-da! Okay. Oh, my stars. Haha. You'll only get that if you're my student or if you know me really well. Okay, so the next one that we're going to highlight or star, if you can star, if you've got paper. Polar bears, for example, depend on glacial ice. So the other article, the other account, doesn't talk about polar bears. It also doesn't use that fact about the size of Alaska, Texas, and Washington. That's a lot of ice lost, y'all. Really, that's a ton. Okay, and then one more. A decrease in the ice limits the bear's ability to reach their prey. So this talks about it will mess up, wildlife, human food production. But this one talks specifically about the polar bears and their ability to reach their prey, aka their food, their chance of survival. Alrighty, so let's go back and fill in this chart right here. Now, you can pause this or pause this after I talk to you about it. But the focus of account 2 is more specifically what type of wildlife. Okay, it's wildlife in the Arctic because we see from the very second sentence it starts talking about the Arctic. The wildlife there is at risk because of global warming, because of the ice melting. So in the third sentence it starts talking about the ice melting and then what a big problem that is and how it will change the Arctic landscape and then how the polar bears depend on it and how they depend on it for food and then they won't be able to survive. So this one talks more specifically about life in the Arctic and why it is at danger because of global warming. So you can write that down right there. However you want to word that is fine. And then ideas that are in both accounts, since we've read both now, they're obviously both about global warming. It's causing environmental changes. And let's look at what we underlined. It's causing environmental changes and the creatures that live in those environments. And then human habits are only adding to global warming. So you can write that down right there too. Or if you want to draw arrows, that's fine. But I don't know how you draw arrows to another page on this. Y'all might be able to figure it out, but you know I struggle. Okay, let me check something real quick. Okay. Alrighty, let's see this question right here on page 189. How does the focus of this account differ from the account on the previous page? Oh, I've talked this much, I get sleepy. Okay, let's look at the hint and then let's go through the answer choices. What is the main point that the author of this account wants you to know? How is it different from the first account? So we said that this account right here, this big paragraph talks more about the Arctic. So let's look at our options. A, instead of telling the cause of global warming, it explains an effect. Instead of describing one solution, it tells about many possibilities. Instead of talking about glacial ice, it describes polar bear habits. And D, instead of naming climate changes, it warns of future problems. Okay, we're going to go through these backwards. Does this one talk about future problems? No, not really. Instead of talking about glacial ice, does this one talk about glacial ice? No. Okay. Instead of describing one solution, it tells about many possibilities. Does it really tell about many possibilities? It says that we should change human habits, so yes, but does it tell about many possibilities? No. So instead of telling the cause, why do I keep saying cause? The cause of global warming, it explains an effect. So this one, the global warming, why? So basically, what's causing global warming? Why do we have global warming? What causes it? Versus the effects or the side effects of global warming. So our answer is A. And then let's see the show you're thinking. Excuse me. Compare and contrast the key information presented in the two passages. What evidence, if any, do both include, and why is it presented differently? So you can write something about the fact that it includes these things that we underlined. So global warming is affecting the Earth's climate, environment, and the creatures living on our Earth, and that it's caused by human habits, or it's at least partially caused by human habits. And then, why has it been presented differently? Why do you think Garza describes the effects of global warming instead of the causes? Why do you think this matters to the author more? Okay, I kind of basically gave you the answer right there, and I didn't mean to. So the side effects are more important to this author than the causes, okay? And then anything else you want to add right there about comparing and contrasting, that's totally fine. All right, if you want to pause and take a break before we get on to the guided practice, that's fine, but I'm going to go ahead and move on. All right, this genre is a report, okay? We've read a few of those. We did more of those in the first 9 weeks of school, not the first 9 weeks, the second 9 weeks before Christmas when we were studying informational texts. All right, so it wants us to read the following passages about desalination. I believe that's how we pronounce that. So it's like saline, if you've heard of saline, salt, okay? Or the removal of salt from water. Use the study buddies and close readings to guide your reading. All right, as I read this passage, I'll think about the author's purpose and I'll note the way it determines how the key information is presented. Excuse me. Okay. Some Simple Water Science by Grace Carter Ham. If 70% of Earth's surface is covered in water, then why do news headlines warn us that water is scarce and that we're running out of it? The problem is that most of this water is salt water, which cannot be used by humans, most land animals, or plants. Only 2.5% is fresh water that can actually be drunk or used to water crops. So the big problem is that there's salt in water. With all the salt water just floating around, it's natural to wonder if there's a way to remove the salt and make it usable. Well, there is, and the answer came from seabirds. A special membrane in the bird's throats will stop salt molecules that allow water molecules to pass through it. After years of studying this membrane, scientists have figured out how to copy this desalination technique, not project, using a process called reverse osmosis. You've probably heard of osmosis. To understand reverse osmosis, you must first understand osmosis itself. Picture a bowl with two compartments. Separating the two is a semi-permeable membrane, a barrier that allows some molecules to pass through but not others. So you can think of it kind of like a colander, okay? Not the whole bowl, but it would be like a big bowl in half, and then that thing that splits it down the middle is kind of like a colander, okay? One compartment holds fresh water and the other sugar water. So one half has fresh water, one has sugar water. Checking the bowl hours later, you discover that the sugar solution is less sweet than it had been. Osmosis has occurred. Molecules of water have traveled from the freshwater side, an area of no sugar concentration, to the sugar side, an area of high concentration, making the concentrations more equal. Okay, so they've had time to spread out. In reverse osmosis, the process is reversed. Duh. It maximizes areas of concentration instead of equalizing them. The process forces salt molecules in seawater, for example, to separate away from the other water molecules rather than allowing them to mix together. Thus, fresh water is born. So instead of, hold on, I'm going to read that one more time. Maximizes areas of concentration instead of equalizing them. The process forces salt water molecules to separate away from water molecules. Okay, so it basically takes the salt out. Thus, fresh water is born. So it moves the salt all to one side, basically. Okay, kind of. Today, special desalination plants work to remove salt from seawater, creating potable drinking water. Thanks to seabirds, these plants can help to solve the world's water problems. Okie doke, let's do the close reading. Circle one piece of key information in each paragraph that helps you understand the author's most important ideas. You want to go ahead and pause me and try to do that, that's fine. All right, I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to highlight it if you want to check your answers or if you want to do that with me, either way works. Okay, in paragraph 1, only 2.5% is fresh water. Y'all, that's a pretty big deal. Out of our whole earth, on the whole world, only 2.5% of water is fresh water. That's crazy. Okay, which is the only water that can be drunk or used to water crops naturally. Then, paragraph 2, what's our big important thing, our key information in paragraph 2? After years of studying this membrane, scientists have figured out how to copy the desalination technique using a process called reverse osmosis. I didn't mean to not highlight the end of it, but that's okay. All right, so they figured out how they can do what the seabirds do. Paragraph 3, the important thing is what osmosis does. It has occurred, and molecules of water have traveled from the freshwater side to the sugar side, making the concentration more equal. So that's what's important in this one. Paragraph 4, The important piece is the process forces salt molecules in seawater to separate from the water molecules, and so therefore you have fresh water. Okay, so that's what desalination does. It takes out the salt. And then in paragraph 5, these plants can help to solve the world's water problems. We go back up to the top. The first thing they ask is, why do news headlines warn us that water is scarce and that we're running out of it? So, and then they tell us that only 2.5% is fresh water. So this tells us how we can fix that. And then in the end, it tells us the big thing is that plants can help to solve the world's water problems. And this is not a plant like a tree or a flower or something. This is like a big corporation, a big business. Like we have power plants, we can have desalination plants. I don't know if I explained that very well, but all these things working together to make water work. If you need to look up the definition because I just did a terrible job defining that, that's totally fine. I think right now we've all got the quarantine brain. It's my new phrase, quarantine brain. Okay, what kind of information does the author include about desalination? So in reverse osmosis, the process is reverse. I love this sentence because it's like when they give you the definition, but the words in the definition. It tells us about reverse osmosis, and then the process forces saltwater molecules to separate away from the water molecules. So that's what happens in desalination. And then I think that's it. Okay, so those are the important parts. Oh, well, that's kind of already right there, but if you wanted to, you could go ahead and underline this up here. The desalination technique uses a process called reverse osmosis. Okay, let's go on to the next page. So right here we had a report. Now we've got a persuasive essay by Lee Epstein, Water for the World. The essential ingredients for life are food, water, and shelter. Water, of course, is especially important. Not only do we need to drink it to survive, but we also need it to water our crops and take care of livestock, both of which are primary food sources. Without a ready supply of clean, fresh water, however, these needs cannot be met. As the number of people in our world continues to grow, meeting everyone's water requirements becomes more and more challenging. How can this be, though, if most of Earth's surface is water? Although 70% of Earth is covered in water, only a small fraction of that total is fresh water safe for human use. This amount appears even smaller when considering that the population has tripled over the last 100 years or so, and our water use has increased sixfold. Not only are there more people, but they are using more water than in the past. In some areas, the supply is dwindling while the demand continues to grow. Given our limited freshwater resources and increased water needs, we must turn to other means of providing adequate water supplies to the 1.1 billion people who currently do not have access to clean, safe water. One popular solution for some areas, including water stress or an imbalance between water use and resources, is desalination. The process manufactures fresh water from seawater. Desalination, or the removal of salt from salt water through reverse osmosis, is not a new idea. Lost my place. Oh, the Greeks and Romans were doing it thousands of years ago, one potful of water at a time. Luckily, technology has made the task easier. As of 2009, there were more than 1,400 desalination plants around the world, producing more than 15 billion gallons of usable water per day. Despite our progress in making desalination a viable solution to the water crisis, we still have a long road ahead. Countries must continue to work toward building more desalination plants to keep up with the growing need for fresh water. Only then will our water resources become as limitless as the sea. All right, water for the world. The first thing we're going to do is the close reading. Underline any information in this passage that is the same or similar to facts presented in some simple water science. Okay, so if you want to pause and go find those now, go ahead. All right, I'm going to continue on. We are going to underline these. The first one is in the first paragraph. Not only do we need to drink it to survive, but we also need it to water our crops and take care of livestock. We're going to stop with Crocs, not Crocs. Although I've been wearing my Crocs a lot lately. Did y'all notice them in my last Zoom meeting? Crops. Okay, let's see where it talks about that. Most of this water is salt, which cannot be used by humans. Oh, here it is. Only 2.5% is fresh water that can actually be drunk or used to water crops. Okay? And then the next thing is in paragraph 2, 70% of Earth's surface is covered in water. Only a small fraction of that total is fresh water safe for human use. All right. And that is up here in, keep losing my place, 70% of Earth's surface is covered in water. This very small percent is what's safe for us to drink. And then at the bottom of paragraph 3, the process manufactures fresh water from seawater. So we're not manufacturing water. We're just, making it happen. Okay. And basically, this whole thing talks about desalination and how it creates fresh water from seawater. Okay, so anywhere in here, pretty much. And then paragraph 4, desalination, or the removal of salt from salt water through reverse osmosis. It talks about that all up in this paragraph. I mean, this report, all in there. Okay, and then that's it. All right, so let's do the second close reading. How is the discussion of desalination different in this passage? Star any facts about desalination that were not present in the the previous text. Okay, so let's look through here. You can pause me and find them yourself if you want, or you can wait on me. I really wish these recordings told me how long I was taking. They probably do, and I just can't figure it out. Okay. Paragraph 3, near the end. One popular solution for some areas experiencing water stress or imbalance between water use and resources is desalination. Okay, so this is different from that other one because hold on, can't remember where it was. Oh, I'm looking at the same thing. That's why. Okay, one popular solution for some areas experiencing water stress or an imbalance between water use and resources is desalination. Okay, this one just mentions the one solution. This one says that it is one popular solution, so implying that there are others. Okay, and then in paragraph 4, we've got 2. The Greeks and Romans were doing it thousands of years ago, one potful of water at a time. The last one does not talk about the Greeks and Romans at all, and that they were using desalination. And then as of 2009, there are more than 1,400 desalination plants around the world, more than 15 billion gallons of usable water every day. producing that much. So we don't have this statistic in this up here. Okay, and then I believe that's it. So we're going to move on to the questions. All right, number 1. Which sentence best sums up how the focus of the first passage differs from the second passage? So what point was the author of each passage trying to make about desalination? This one, excuse me, this one seemed to tell us all about how desalination worked. It tells us the reverse osmosis method and it explains it to us like using a bowl. And then this one, Water for the World, it tells us that it's essential and that there's a problem because as the number of people in our world continues to grow, meeting everyone's water requirements becomes more and more challenging. How can this be, though? Because the earth is 70% water. All right, so let's look through these choices. A, the first passage describes the growing demand for fresh water, while the second one describes the current limits to water resources. The first one is not all about the growing demands for fresh water, so we can already just mark that one out. All right, moving on. B, the first passage stresses the scarcity of water, while the second explains how salt can be removed from seawater. If anything, I think these two would be reversed on B, because the first one talks about how salt can be removed from seawater, and then B talks about how big of a deal it is that water is scarce. Okay, C, the first passage presents the pros and cons of desalination, while the second argues that desalination is the solution for water problems. I don't think this first one gives us any cons about desalination. I don't remember that anywhere up here, any cons about desalination, other than that there's not enough of it going on. And then the first passage describes the desalination process. Does it do that? Yes. It tells us about reverse osmosis and what all happens in reverse osmosis, the desalination process. And then while the second one discusses how desalination can help solve the water crisis. So one popular solution for some areas is desalination. It's been used for a long time. There are plants that are using it, producing more than 15 billions of gallons of usable water every day. We still have a long road ahead. They need to continue to do this. So the answer is D. Okay. All right, number 2. Which of the following explains how the two authors shape their presentations by using similar key information in a different way? So they both talk about water and desalination and the water crisis. So let's look back at the information you underlined to see which facts are featured in both passages. Okay, we underlined things that were the same. So we need it to survive and to water our crops. 70% of the earth is covered in water. Only a very small part is safe for human use. Desalination produces fresh water from seawater. It removes the salt through reverse osmosis. Okay, both authors talk about how people need water to survive, but the second explains that it will happen, explains what will happen if water needs aren't met. It does not tell us in here what's going to happen if we don't have enough water, so that one's wrong. The second passage, oops, both authors name reverse osmosis as a key part of desalination, but the first explains the science principles used in the process. Did both of them talk about reverse osmosis as a key part of desalination? Yes, reverse osmosis right there. Does the first one explain the science principles used in osmosis a little bit more? Yes, but let's come back to that one. Okay. C, both authors explain that the 1.1 billion people don't have clean, salt-free water, but the second uses the facts to support desalination. Let's find where that 1.1 billion fact is. Okay, 1.1 billion people who do not have access to clean, safe water. Was that in this one? I'm not seeing that number anywhere. So Both of them do not talk about the 1.1 billion people. All right. Both authors say that only a small percent of Earth's water is fresh, but the first discusses the challenges of finding water sources. Yes, they both talk about only a small percent of Earth's water is fresh, but the first one, discussing the challenges of finding water sources, fresh water sources, I mean, it mentions it in the beginning, but it doesn't really go on and on about the challenges. So our correct answer would be B. Both authors name reverse osmosis as a key part of desalination, but the first explains the science principles used in that process. So this one talks a little bit more about desalination, the history of it, the possible future of it. This one talks about the osmosis, the reverse osmosis, how all this creates desalination. All right, and then number 3, compare the presentations about desalination in the two passages. Explain how they are alike and different. Describe how the authors use similar and different facts to achieve their unique purposes. Use at least 2 details from the text in your response. So let's look back at this real quick. We underlined things that were the same. So we need it to drink, to survive. We need it for our crops. 70% of the earth is covered in water. Only small is safe enough for us to use. Desalination creates fresh water from seawater, and it removes the salt through reverse osmosis. Some things that were different are these things that we've highlighted or that you've starred. And then why do you think the authors chose to include the facts they did? Let's look at their titles. Water for the World and Some Simple Water Science. So this one is talking about the science behind creating clean water from salt water, or drinkable water from salt water. And so that's why it talks about reverse osmosis, and all of the details that go in that so much. And then this one is called Water for the World. So Epstein is talking about why we need more water and how we can create more clean water, and what we need to do in order to keep creating clean water. So since we have not done a compare and contrast writing prompt yet, I'm going to give it to you. So go ahead and write this down. If you need to pause this and so you can have the screen for a while and write that down, that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and read it. Both passages discuss the importance of desalination as a way to increase our supply of drinkable fresh water. So they both talk about desalination and how it can help us to have water that we can drink. However, Some Simple Water Science, so the first article, uses facts about desalination to explain the science behind the process, while Water for the World uses facts about water scarcity, population growth, and desalination itself to suggest that we need to increase the number of desalination plants to help solve the water problem. So let's go back to this for just a second. We know that the first one talks about Some Simple Water Science, but Water for the World talks about the scarcity, the population growth, and desalination itself. So let's look at that. It's essential. Needs cannot be met if we don't have clean, fresh water. The number of people in our world continues to grow. Population has tripled over the last 100 years. Water use has increased 6-fold. There's more people using more water than in the past. The supply is dwindling. 1.1 billion people do not have access to clean, safe water. Y'all, that is crazy. We live in the year 2020 in America, and as long as you pay your bill or somebody's paying your bill, you've got water running into your home. And so that's just wild that 1.1 billion people on our earth still do not currently have access to clean, safe water. And that is the sad, unfortunate truth. Okay, off my soapbox. What else were we talking about? Water scarcity, population growth, desalination itself. So it talks about Desalination is a popular solution. They've been using this since thousands of years ago. There's plants all around the world, but we need more. Okay, I'm going to move on. The next thing is our independent practice. So if you are doing it on Canvas, let me pull up Canvas. Right here, lesson 18 independent practice, you will see, I'm going to pull it up and see if I can preview it as one of you. Okay, please read pages 193 through 195 before you answer these questions. So you need to read this page, Big Fish in Troubled Waters. And then you need to read Protecting the Oceans, One Choice at a Time. Okay, and then here are your questions. So it's going to look a little bit different on the PDF than on the Canvas, but it's the same thing, I promise. So on this one, you got number 1, part A, part B. You know how to do those. And then it's got number 2, and then number 3 is this big graph. So if you keep trying to scroll, you can't. There's no writing prompt for this one. Yay, I'm so glad. I know y'all are too, because I know you don't love the writing prompts. So I could not put this graph and have you fill it in on Canvas, or if I could, I couldn't figure it out. So I made it multiple choice. So on here you've got, it says, compare and contrast the way the authors shape their presentations in the 2 articles by writing the statements into the correct boxes on the table. 1 box will remain empty. So there's 6 boxes. 1's going to remain empty. I think it was this one that was remaining empty. So basically 5 questions right here. You've got to fit these 5 statements into these 5 boxes. So on independent practice, close out of that. You've got question number 1. Now this is actually question number 1, part B. So it says part A, and that's number 1. And then you got number 3, which would actually be number 2. And then numbers 4 through 8 are the graph just in, see, this will be like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They're just multiple choice, okay? So that is the only difference. And then let me go back real quick and see if there's anything else. Here we go. I don't think so. We've gone over everything. So this video will be right here later. You'll see it published once I get it uploaded to YouTube and get it uploaded to every class. And you can watch this video and it'll be there. If you're confused about any of the previous week's work, it's all here, here. It's in all these modules, okay? And if you've got questions, just message me on Canvas. I try to keep up to date with them. See, I've only got 1 unread message, and they messaged me right before I started making this video, so I couldn't answer it. All right, I love y'all very much, and I hope that y'all have a great week and that you're doing okay. Love you. Bye.